Welcome back everyone to Supercharge with Dr. V. This week we've been talking about how climate change will affect our health in the not so long-term future. So today, let's consider an aspect of health that we may not think about immediately when we think about climate change, and that is mental health. Many of us worry about the future of our climate, and that worrying, even if it's in the back of our head, can increase the risk for developing mental health disorders such as depression, anxiety, phobias, sleep disorders, and even substance abuse. Research has shown that climate scientists who are constantly exposed to the issue are at much higher risk of developing these mental diseases. And the more we hear about it, the more of an impact it's going to have on our minds too, whether we know it or not. But that doesn't mean we turn a blind eye. Ignorance is not bliss. The American Psychological Association says that our psychological responses to climate change are harming us. Take natural disasters, for example. Right after extreme events, such as Hurricane Sandy or Hurricane Katrina, the data shows that PTSD and suicidality increase. The studies show that 54% of adults and 45% of children suffer from depression after extreme events like this. Now let's look at this from a different angle. The UN predicts that in just 5 years, 2/3 of the entire world's population will face water shortages. The World Bank predicts that by 2050, there will be 140 million climate refugees, and other data shows that that number could be as high as 1 billion people. Mass migrations and scarcity of resources are going to trigger things like war, violence, and political instability. Just imagine how much of a physical and mental impact that's going to have on our health. Now you may say that I don't live in a part of the world where natural disasters are common or water shortages are common. But did you know that you don't personally have to experience a traumatic event to suffer from the mental health consequences of it? Just watching the news, reading about it, or hearing about it from a friend can trigger the same mental consequences as someone who's actually lived through that traumatic event. It's called secondary trauma, and it just shows us how much of an impact it can have on our minds. And also, let's not forget we live in a very interconnected world. Just because you don't live in a place where there are a lot of natural disasters or food and water shortages doesn't mean you know someone who doesn't. You may have close family or friends who live in different areas of the world, maybe different parts of the country or in other countries, that could be influenced by this. How is that going to impact you if they suffer? I'd also like to mention what Britt Ray mentions in her TED Talk when she talks about the climate change effects on mental health. She studies just one of the many emotional hardships that people face due to climate change. And it's in the form of a question that many people in our generation are struggling to answer. And that is, should I have a child in the age of climate change? After all, a child that's born today is going to experience in his or her lifetime more climate-related disasters than any of us ever have. I mean, some people feel that it's better to adopt children, and other people think it's unethical to have more than one, because more kids means more greenhouse gases. Now, it's sad that we've even gotten to this point, because this problem of climate change is much more systemic than people's decision to have children. But, as Britt Ray says in her TED Talk, let's unpack the logic here. Let's take a look at the numbers. On average, having one less child in an industrialized nation can save about 59 tons of carbon dioxide per year, while in comparison, living car-free saves about 2.5 tons. Avoiding one transatlantic flight saves about 1.5 tons, and eating a plant-based diet can save almost a ton. And consider that a Bangladeshi child only adds 56 metric tons of carbon to their parents' carbon legacy over their lifetime, while an American child, in comparison, adds 9,441 to theirs. So this is why some people argue that it's parents from nations with huge carbon footprints who should think the hardest about how many kids they should have. Now, the decision to have a child, or children, and our feelings about the future are deeply personal, and they're affected by so many other things, such as cultural norms, religious viewpoints, socioeconomic status, education levels, and so much more. But I thought it was important to share this example, because personally, I had never thought about the mental health issue in this way. I mean, doesn't the increasing rate of informed women choosing not to have children indicate to you that climate change is starting to hit us psychologically? This is clearly a mental health issue. Now, it wouldn't be fair to talk about mental health issues and not talk about what we can do about it. 1. Acknowledge what you're feeling and talk about it. This is all impacting us collectively, so the only way to get through this is together. Number 2, strengthen your communities. Whether it's your family, your friend circle, or an online social group, grow that middle circle so that you can support others and they can support you. And number 3, take action. Earth's destruction seems like something that's completely out of our hands. But staying well informed and doing what we can to tackle the effects of climate change can give us some sense of fulfillment and control. So that's it for mental health and climate change. I don't know about you, but learning about this topic made me realize how much of a change climate change can make in our minds. We have to work together to solve this problem that we've gotten ourselves into, not just for ourselves, but for future generations. I feel that it's our moral duty and a test of our character to leave this planet a better place than when we first entered it. So let's change the course of climate change together. And see you next week when we talk about the basics of exercise.